How's it going, Giants fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo, and today we want to discuss Darius Slayton potentially being floated on the trade market, how much the Giants would save. Is he even a tradable asset at this point in time? What they kind of did last week against the Patriots to get him some more reps and kind of showcase his qualities and talents, because at this point in time, it seems like he's losing reps in practice to some other guys that are far cheaper. We'll discuss his salary cap hit. Since he's had a lot of service time in the NFL since being drafted in the 5th round, he actually qualifies for a pretty substantial increase in monetary gain this year. So definitely a lot to pay for a guy that may not make a significant impact on the team. Of course, there's a lot of mouths to feed with Wandale, Kadarius, Sterling Shepard is supposed to be healthy for the regular season. Saquon's going to be more active as a receiver. You got Daniel Bellinger and, of course, Kenny Galladay, who everybody has the knife to the neck at right now. So it's kind of an interesting situation for Darius Slayton, who, like I said, may be losing target share. And then, you throw in guys like Colin Johnson, Richie James, who, Richie James has special teams usage, added to the equation. So definitely something to discuss there as well, Anthony. Before we dive into this interesting topic, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I think that this Darius Slayton topic is super interesting considering the status of the New York Giants roster. Keep in mind, preseason, that's roster shuffling time. This is where depth charts start to take shape. This is where roster bubble players will find out whether or not they're going to be on this team. People always end up on the waiver wire that you don't expect to see available in free agency. This is the time where you're going to see a lot of players lose their jobs, gain new jobs, move around, and trades do get made during this time, especially towards the end of the preseason. This preseason is going to be crucial for the New York Giants as well as for Darius Slayton, because Darius Slayton is not only trying to earn his way onto the Giants roster, he's trying to put good stuff on tape so he can earn his way onto another roster, make himself desirable enough to be traded for, or if the Giants do end up cutting him, make him desirable enough for a team to go out there and pick him up off the waiver wire or sign him immediately after he releases from the waiver wire. So it's a crucial time for both parties, and I do think that a trade is probably what's best for both parties involved here, the New York Giants and Darius Slayton. As you mentioned, Alex, there are a lot of mouths to feed in the Giants wide receiver core. But one thing that I'll say, there's other positions like secondary all throughout there. There's a lack of depth. There's not enough mouths to feed. So the Giants might be wise to go ahead and move on from Darius Slayton, invest that money elsewhere.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at kind of the Giants' current salary situation. They have $5.4 million. If Aaron Robinson once again puts together a bad performance in week 2 of the preseason, we may have to have a more legitimate discussion about, can we trust him in the regular season? Now, we've seen Darnay Holmes pretty much rack up interceptions. He may be having one of those Corey Washington type of training camps for the Giants this year. He's been unbelievable, and there are arguments to make that he should be transitioned over to CB2 alongside Adoree Jackson instead of playing in that nickel role, at least competing, and maybe just flip-flopping them, testing out the water to see what happens. And if not, maybe you look to go to the free agent market and sign a veteran. There's a lot of really good players on the veteran market right now at cornerback who could help us. And one way to do that, especially if you want to walk into the regular season with a bit of cash on hand, is to find a trade partner for Darius Slayton. Cutting him, you're still going to owe him a decent amount of money. So, if I find his contract here, so even if they cut him, they actually save a bit of money. Here's exactly his contract. He's going to make $2.6 million against the cap this year. If they cut him, they only have $58K in dead money. They would actually save $2.5 million by cutting Darius Slayton. So you don't actually need to trade him to get rid of the money. You just have to cut him. And at this point, I think he's a long shot to get a spot on the roster. I think they know they have in Colin Johnson. We saw him. I think he had 7 catches on 8 targets for 82 yards last week. He had the fumble, but I don't really, I can look past that. Richie James had a touchdown, really good route runner coming in from the 49ers, where they're very used to running secondary routes and being very versatile and flexible in that sense. And then he also can be a special teams guy too. So, Darius Slayton is not a good special teams player. He's not going to be returning punts for you. The guy can barely catch the football, let alone catch punts coming at him in the swirling wind of MetLife. So, you're looking at Darius Slayton right now and saying, okay, what do you offer us besides straight line speed? And we don't even know if the offensive line is going to hold up enough for you to get downfield right now. I think what they're going to be, the scheme right now, I think is going to be a lot more predicated on short yardage, West Coast style, spreading out the offense, but also utilizing these playmakers to kind of get, going in terms of manufacturing production, short concepts, getting them into space. and then letting them do a lot of the work after the catch. Kenny Golladay is going to have a hard time getting target share in this system, in my opinion, especially in year one, because I don't think the offensive line is going to be like exponentially better than last, or it'll be better than last year, but I don't think it's going to be like a top 15 unit. I think maybe we're lucky if we reach average, to be honest with you. And in that case, we don't have time to wait for Kenny Golladay to get downfield because he's not a fast receiver. He doesn't create separation, and you're really hoping that he can be that kind of 50-50 jump ball, red zone target type of guy. I don't think we're going to be able to wait for him to get downfield before Daniel Jones is going to be under extreme pressure. So I am a bit concerned about that. Apparently the offenses looked like absolute ass the last couple days in practice, and it's just practice, so I'm not too concerned, especially against Wink Martindale's system. Apparently Wink Martindale's system has been, they looked vanilla, in fact, against the Patriots. They were blitzing a ton, but in practice, apparently, they've been even like more extreme about it. So Daniel Jones definitely has been under unbelievable pressure, which I guess could be a good thing because now he's going to go into a regular season game against a scheme that doesn't rely heavily on the blitz or as heavily on the blitz. And maybe that helps him. Maybe he feels a little bit more comfortable because he's been just totally destroyed by it all training camp long. So, I guess my question for you, Anthony, now is, would you prefer to just cut him? And it seems like they're trying to give him more reps during training camp and preseason games to display his qualities. So maybe you get a late round draft pick for him. What are the chances you think they do end up getting rid of him, like cutting him or trading him, I guess?
You know what? I wouldn't be shocked to see the Giants pull off a player-for-player swap in a trade with Darius Slayton. Usually in these preseason trades, there's more conditional late-round draft picks. The Giants maybe get a conditional 6th, a conditional 7th. If Darius Slayton gets X amount of touchdowns or yards with the team, then they get the draft pick. If he doesn't, then they don't get anything at all. You'll see a lot of conditional picks with these late-round or late off-season trades. I know the Dolphins and I believe the Texans just made a trade similar to that for a tight end, conditional 6th or 7th round pick. You could see something like that with Darius Slayton. Now, I do think Darius Slayton is a little bit of a more proven player. He's been in the league for a few years and proven to be very good at times. The one selling point for the Giants is Darius Slayton's chemistry with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has had Darius Slayton as his favorite target since his rookie season, and some of Daniel Jones's best games of his career have also been Darius Slayton's best games of his career. So that's really where the selling point is for the Giants in terms of whether or not they want to keep Darius Slayton. But in terms of getting rid of Darius Slayton, I think you could potentially see them maybe swap Slayton for a late round veteran cornerback, maybe on another team, declining veteran who just needs to step in and play some reps for the Giants. You could totally see something like that happening, or just a really late round conditional pick. Again, I don't think the Giants get too much out of a trade in terms of assets in return, but the main selling point for moving on from Darius Slayton is, as you mentioned, clearing that cap space. Because if they don't get anybody in return on the trade, let's say they do, okay, so they trade Darius Slayton, they free up $2.5 million, maybe the player that they get in return takes away $1 million of that, so then they still have $1.5 million extra to go ahead and sign a veteran on the minimum. But just trading him away for a pick, conditional pick, maybe the condition really is just in case he plays well, you'll get something out of it. But regardless of that fact, you are saving $2.5 million. That's the main part of that trade, is the cap savings for the Giants. So they're really just trying to find a team that says, yes, we'll help you save that cap space while acquiring some low-level talent. But then the Giants can take that $2.5 million, and we went over the list the other day, Alex. There are a lot of talented veteran cornerbacks on the free agency market that we think would be great fits with the New York Giants. Jimmy Smith is a name to throw out there. Chris Harris Jr. is a name to throw out there. And there's also lower level offensive linemen that could provide depth to the interior of the Giants offensive line. Lots of free agents still available in this pool of free agents heading into the regular season. And I think that is the most exciting aspect of potentially trading away Darius Slayton, is going ahead and taking a dive into that free agency pool right before the season starts.
Yeah, I mean, look, right now, Darius Slayton is seeing massive decreases in usage, ultimately, and yardage the past couple seasons, right? As a rookie, he looked pretty good, 740 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns, then had 751 yards, 3 touchdowns, and last year cut that in half at 339 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's consistently gotten worse, and his dropping issues have not dissipated. After seeing Colin Johnson and Richie James against the Patriots, I am pretty convinced that there is no way in hell Darius Slayton is on this roster come week 1 of the regular season, simply because Daniel Jones doesn't really need him, right? He had that one play, that screen pass that he was following the block of Evan Neal. But in reality, Wan'Dale Robinson's the one that's going to be getting that rep in regular season time. He's the one that's going to be getting that he's small, agile, quick. He can make guys miss. He'll make the most of having Evan Neal running in front of him, 320-pound mammoth of actually maybe more, 350-pound human being running in front of him. So at this point in time, Darius Slayton definitely doesn't make the most sense for this team, especially because, we have other guys that we need to feed and this system is changing. It's not like we're taking like a couple of deep shots downfield and hoping and praying it's going to be completed. Now there's actually going to be a system we're going to be relying heavier on the running game, in my opinion, as just trying to extend drives and keep the time of possession on the Giants side. But it's interesting. Like, this is more of a money situation. Like, I wonder if and you mentioned before, maybe they trade him for a conditional pick. The way I see this going is if they did find a way to trade him, you're not going to get anything in return more in the sense that you're probably going to get, like, if he plays a certain amount of snaps, you get a conditional pick in exchange, right? Like, it's going to have to be predicated on like if he actually plays, because end of the day, he is making $2.5 million and the Giants are trying to get rid of him. And like, I don't know what team's gonna be like, okay, if the Giants are trying to get rid of him and trying to unload his $2.5 million salary, why the hell would we want him? So like, I guess that's kind of the argument. And I'll throw into the mix, like I said, if you're going to trade him, you're probably going to it's going to have to be some sort of like, he has to play 50% of offensive snaps. He has to have over 300 yards or like some number. And it's like, if he passes that threshold, then you get compensated. Then you get a conditional pick or a 5th or 6th round pick, whatever it might be. And that's what I say. He could help a team. Like, he's not a terrible player. Like, he's a good downfield threat. If there's a team that for example, maybe the Cardinals, before they had Marquise Brown, like Darius Slayton might have fit that mold. Like, he's a speedster. He could have kind of helped Kyler Murray downfield a little bit, but then they went and got Marquise Brown with the DeAndre Hopkins suspension for PEDs, So there are teams that like need burners downfield. And if they have available cap space, like, why not? Why not trade for him and see what he could do? He does have 1 year left on his deal. Yeah. So it's a 4th year. Yeah. So he has 1 more year left on his contract. Then you could extend him probably for next to nothing, which could be something to consider. But Anthony, any last thoughts on Darius Slayton? I think that we're pretty much in agreement here that he probably will be cut or traded before regular season starts.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement, and one of the reasons why is because of the guys we've seen stand out in the preseason. You mentioned Colin Johnson, Richie James Jr., who I've been super impressed with. I think that those two players, you combine their skill sets, and you make up the difference of what you're losing with Darius Slayton. I think you're getting a better route runner in Richie James, and I think you're getting a better vertical threat in Colin Johnson just because he's one of the tallest receivers in the NFL. Now, I think with both of those guys, you might be losing out on some speed because Darius Slayton is a true burner on the straight line, but he has a very limited skill set with that. Darius Slayton, I think at times has shown a more advanced route tree. We've seen him run some decent slants and some decent digs, but overall, he primarily does just run 9 routes down the sideline. Colin Johnson can do that. He can run 9 routes down the sideline. He can run a dig route. And Richie James can do all the other stuff underneath that Darius Slayton and Colin Johnson don't have the ability to do. So I think it's very important to see what those guys have for the remainder of the preseason, see what the Giants have in Colin Johnson and Richie James Jr., give them a lot of run during the preseason, make them the starters right now, and let's see if they can prove to be more valuable than Darius Slayton can be. Again, I want to see Darius Slayton get a lot of reps in the preseason just to boost his trade value. I know that's the plan of the Giants already, and I'm super excited to see that unfold and excited to see what exactly the Giants are able to get out of a potential Darius Slayton cut or trade.
Absolutely, guys. I'd love to hear your perspectives below in the YouTube comments. As always, my friends, appreciate all the feedback and have good conversations in the comments. Really means a lot to us, so appreciate that. As always, make sure to like and subscribe below Apple, Spotify, and YouTube for daily updates and content as we approach the second preseason game. So catch you guys on the next episode and have a fantastic rest of your day.